All right, hello, welcome to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness, the highest levels of love light. I'm gonna roll right into this. This is not going to be a light language video, and it's actually very different from what I've done in the past. So this is actually a breakdown and interpretation of one of the videos that I did recently that involved light language, an English translation, but then a translation of the English translation. What I wanted to share in that is I had a dear friend, she's one of my best childhood friends, who was telling me recently, Carrie, I really want to get into what it is that you're doing. She didn't know I had English interpretations. She just tried to listen to the light language and support you. She said, I don't understand a word that you're saying. And light language and ancestral toning and language just doesn't, she's not in that space where that's something that activates her. And everybody's different. And so I wanted to honor her and others like her and give this interpretation of what it is that I'm doing. And so this is going to be for you. And also, a breakdown of what this means. I didn't realize years ago as I was writing what it was that I was actually writing about. I just enjoyed it. It was poetic to me. It was in this seesaw frequency that made me feel good when I wrote it. And so I just did. And now I understand that it has to do with bliss, fire in the blood, phase conjugation. And along this journey, I found Dan Winters, who has the website Fractal Field. And I always share his work among other teachers because it's essential. And it's actually what I'm talking about in my own way. And so, to go backwards just for a minute, for anybody out there who is a Reiki healer, like myself, I'm a Reiki master. I've gone through the classes and the works and working with others, and it's been a magical journey. But that was an opening for me. It led me into a deeper space of myself where I learned about other healing modalities that I have access to through my DNA that I've had lifetime after lifetime that I'm bringing through in the work that I do now. And so part of this includes language, because language is living light. We are living light. We are constantly communicating. Pause. Okay. My husband came home. So having said this, all of this is a living light code. It's living light language. It's a form of communication. And in Reiki, symbols are used. You can speak the names of the healing words, so to speak. You can move them as if you would in sign language, which is actually moving plasma around with intention. And there's so much more to it, but that's just a generalized description of what energy work, energy healing. I'm using Reiki as a prime example because many are very familiar with it. And that is essentially what I'm doing in my own way through quantum healing, my own DNA, and what I have carried through from past, future versions of myself. So I just went a little multidimensional there. So that's not necessarily a huge description of energy work, but that's a very simple and easy. When we go deeper, and I do invite you guys to check out the Fractal Field website if you get an opportunity to, and you can look up living light language. You can look up how language works, and he even uses visual tools. And it was so helpful for me because I found him through pure synchronicity, or lining up of, synchronicity. And that told me, this is what I've been talking about. And he does it in such a clear fashion. Mine is poetry. I started off writing these pages and pages of information, and it was all coded to me because for me, I'm not a mathematician or scientist. And quite frankly, I just like to write. I like to speak about what I'm feeling and seeing and hearing. And so here we go. I'm going to share this screen and do a little interpretation of this particular video. Did I say what video it was? I can't remember. It's about 11 minutes and 3 seconds. It was on September 7th, so 9/7. And it's going to be titled Heart, Solar Plexus, Light Language, Ancestral. And so much of what I'd said was in English. However, there's a deeper layer to even those words. I'll go backwards just for a moment. Oftentimes when I'm speaking in ancestral language, which is, again, my DNA that is I'm accessing through, you could call it beyond this linear space of time, oftentimes I will get pictures or things will be shown to me, but sometimes the language is meant to be felt and not necessarily broken down into the English language, because the English language can be very limiting. And that's part of why the words that I use have a certain rhythm and flow to them in English. So we're going to go there. And part of what I wrote, some of you might go, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I already got it. We're going to go a little deeper. I'm going to hit pause and then I'm going to share the screen. And so here we are. So I've typed this up so that, and I'm going to be posting it in my blog. So that's carryyvonne.com. And that way, some of us are more visual and we need to see it on paper. Some of us are more intuitive and or kinesthetic and we can just feel it. Sometimes we need to hear it. And from my style, I like to include a little bit of all of that. So I'm going to go through this and break it down just a little bit so that it's understandable and somewhat. And keep in mind, I invite you to keep in mind that this is also multidimensional. It isn't exactly, I'm not a physics teacher, but this is having to do with physics. So as we come into focus, as we come into so I'm going to read the paragraph and then I'm going to go back and break it down just a bit. As we come into centripetal, and by the way, I always say centripetal. I just mispronounce. I make it my own words, right? As we come into focus, as we come into centripetal, focus, as we come into higher forces, as we renew ourselves through the aspect of the heart, the emerald stone, gemstone, as we allow ourselves to reflect outwardly, we connect in with the rows of our ancestors. Our will becomes a divine reflection. We become centered in our own divinity. We break apart the rules of linearity. We abandoned that which has been malarkey. We step out of conformity. We step into a higher reality, a higher dimensional landscape or plane of existence. And I was seeing a boat, and when the boat's nose is really high in the water, you have to plane off in order to balance. And this also has to do with this finding the right speed. If you're going too slow, it won't plane off. If you're going too fast, it'll just, so that has all to do with it. So if I go back, I also wrote centripetal. So we're going to go back in and kind of go through here. Centripetal. So it has to do with value. It has to do with the Trinity. It has to do with the golden ratio, or phi. I always get that confused with pi or phi. Maybe they're the same thing. I think one is mathematical, one is the golden ratio, and one is the golden means, which I think are very similar. And by the way, I invite everybody to get out of judgment right now about if those numbers are true and accurate, if the science has it wrong. This is more about bliss and just understanding that a lot of what we've written or read or listened to, it's reading between the lines. That's exactly what this is. So it's centripetal, the call to be centered, to unify the Trinity, mind, body, spirit, or wherever we resonate with, to add value, the scent, the senses, the call to our senses, listening, phoning in, ET, phone home, and centered in the petals. Think of a flower, think of a rose and the rose petals, and also petals on a car. So it's our vehicle, our driving force. Are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? As we renew ourselves, we're constantly renewing ourselves. We come into higher forces, and this has to do with gravity. The center of gravity forces the force. May the force be with you, right? Luke, Jedi. As we renew ourselves through the aspect of the heart. And this is basically centeredness in the rose, which is that heart emerald essence, the emerald stone. And I'm going to kind of skip to the end and show you what I found about the emerald stone, because just this first paragraph has so many other layers. So we allow ourselves to reflect outwardly. So we're seeing and we're reflecting back to us, out to us, what's inside of us. So we're reflecting it outward from inward. We connect in with the roads and the rose. And the rose has to do with fractal, phase conjugation, centeredness. It has to do with bliss. It has to do with balance, right? Our 0-point harmonic. And again, I'm using these terms loosely. They're not exact. They just give us a reference point or a visualization. Also the road, the red and blue roads of the ancestors, right? As I was seeing rows of our ancestors, if you guys have ever seen the movie Interstellar, and there's the library or all the lines, I was seeing all of this kind of folding in like a Penrose triangle or a strange loop. So it's like this constant twist, right? And folding in like a rose. And I'm going to just skip to the bottom here. Our will becomes a divine reflection. This is the solar plexus, by the way. This is our will as creators. Our will be done. And it's divinely guided. We are then able to tap into our divine guidance. We break apart the rules of linearity. So that's even a play on words. I could break that one sentence down into so many different things, but I want to stick to the juice of this. We abandoned that which has been malarkey, and malarkey is basically nonsense, no sense, distraction, it's silliness, and that is a play on words as well. We've already abandoned it, which has been. And D, there's a lot having to do with D, which I might break down in a completely different video. Musical note, harmony. It's basically past, present, and future. When we are in the heart, when we are in centripetal or phase conjugation, I talk about this in a video about karma. We are essentially stepping out of all of it. We're stepping out of time. And when we do that, we are essentially controlling and changing our past, present, and future. And I'm going multidimensional for just a moment. And we step into a higher reality. We're not stuck in 3D because that's just one plane of existence. A higher dimensional landscape or plane of existence, right? And that I'm talking about that boat, planing off and finding that balance. Although it's also talking about planes, like a plane of existence, flight, right? Movement, our vehicle, a plane is something that moves through existence. Our bodies are that plane, okay? And it's balance, finding the right pedal, the right speed. If it goes too fast, goes too slow. I'm going to roll down. I want to go back to emerald and gemstone. Many of us know that emerald has to do with the heart. If I go on to, I don't think I looked up emerald, but that's okay. The original meaning of the word gem, I was guided to kind of go into that. And we know it's a precious stone. But I loved the fact I'm on etymology. You can see what I'm on. It's to germinate or to sprout a bud. So it makes me think of a rosebud, right? So it's so symbolic here. So a precious stone, a jewel, right? Many of us know the jewel, the lotus, the petals of the heart, right? And it's also Lithuanian, which I thought was interesting, which is to germinate, sprout, and it's old Slavonic. I never say it right. Slavic or Slavonic, to germinate. And a lot of the words I use in my ancestral toning, sometimes it's Native American, sometimes it sounds Slavonic. So there is a little bit of that playing into this, by the way, as well. Also, if you look down here, it says it's Old English, precious stone, gem, jewel, also eye. So I thought that was interesting because that, of course, makes me think of the eye of the storm and the all-seeing eye, or pineal gland, which, of course, is all connected, right? We see through the heart. That's our vision. So if I go back to the reason I have this hexagonal crystal family, let me go ahead and look up. I'm going to hit, so bear with me just for a moment. I'm just going to click on here to emeralds. So emeralds, stone. And I do like to use Wikipedia a lot. I know it has its issues, but just to give us a general idea, I always like to just look at it because it kind of synchronizes everything that I'm talking about. So I'll go back while that's finding emeralds. So if I go back, the emerald stone, the gemstone, as we allow ourselves to reflect outwardly, right? So we're sending that essence of us through our heart, which is, if you're familiar with yoga or the chakra systems, emerald is green. Green is anahata, right? The heart chakra. And so I'll go back into this emerald, which aren't they beautiful? And what I found interesting about this was, so it comes from green, right? It was more about the hexagonal shape. I'm going to be using this on my picture, which I just found. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm seeing this as synchronistic because this is actually a very beautiful emerald, which I could go into synchronicities about this, because doesn't that look like an X-ray? Doesn't it look, and it has the 6 branches, which is very synchronistic for what I'm about to share. So if I go back into this, the emerald is hexagonal. And if you go to the hexagonal crystal family, and I go to, which is six-sided, I believe. If I click on hexagonal, I'll have to come back to that. I had this saved on my laptop. Let me hit pause. Okay, so I had to find it. I thought it was under. So it's a hexagonal crystal family. And it's funny because it's got 6 sides. And if you look up hexagon, this is all encoded as well. Now, our reality structure is multidimensional. And so this may seem a little confusing at first. And I'm still interpreting it, to be honest. But what I see here is this hexagon. And I'm going to come back to the hexagon in just a moment. So we've talked about the emerald and the reference to green. And so I skipped to the bottom here. So if you go to my writing and you skip to the bottom here, I wrote emerald associated with the heart. It can also be connected with the blue flame, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. It has to do with fusion in the blood. And I referred back to bliss, neutral point, planing off. It's part of the hexagonal crystal family, and it consists of 12 point groups, such that at least one of their space groups has the hexagonal lattice as underlying lattice and is the union of the hexagonal crystal system and the trigonal crystal system. Even that is layered in reality. So if we think of our matrix that we exist in, if we think of our bodies as an expression of material, right, our skin suit technology, I'm seeing this reference to this trinity, the trigonal crystal system, and the merging of a higher hexagonal crystal system, which is symbolic as to what's going on. We've already gone from 3D to 4D, moving up in the dimensional lattice work, which is the crystalline structure of our reality, so to speak. This also ties in with the trifold flame of the heart, which of course is what we're talking about with the emerald. And one of the things that we talk about, or that I've written about, but if you listen to what Dan Winters talks about, he calls it two pine cones kissing. And that is essentially, and I'm probably butchering this, but essentially it is implosion, it's bliss. And that's what I'm speaking of when I'm writing half the time about these things. So that's the trifold flame of the heart, the union of the Trinity and the 12 points, which from my perspective is 12 dimensions. Of course, there's more, but perhaps this is helping us to link into those 12 dimensions, which also reminds me of the 12 grid tree of life. So many of us realize that the tree of life is 12, not necessarily 10. And it's beyond that, but I'm just using this as a general tool of reference. Also, I talked about GEMstone, which I brought up, which was to germinate or to sprout. So if we think of the seeds of the heart, when we're in our heart space coherence, we are sprouting our reality. We are creating it from a much more focused space. So I just went back to the top. We plane off to jump planes, so to speak. Now I can break that down. Obviously, we're planing off, we're balancing, we're finding that right speed, we're coming into neutrality, okay? We're also jumping planes. We're changing our vehicles. Our vehicle is shifting, and we're also moving into a different plane of existence. And it's not necessarily up and down, okay? It can also be side to side. It's a little bit like that interstellar I was talking about. Picture a grid all around us, and we're jumping into a different layer of multidimensionality. Driving in the fast lane, we must recognize which pedal we are using. This is a play on words reference back to centripetal, too fast, too slow, and change. But also, have you ever been behind somebody in the fast lane and they're going really slow, or they keep hitting their brake and they're just basically should not be in the fast lane? That is part of this as well. It's like, be aware. We're aware. Are we going too fast? Okay, let's slow it down. Are we going too slow? Let's speed it up. Let's get somewhere in the middle and find that balance so that we're not completely all over the place. So, and we're not holding up traffic either. Some need to pedal faster, others need to stay in the slow lane. For the true balance is somewhere in the middle, and at different times we are in the process of changing lanes. We are sometimes caught up in misdirection, a misinterpretation of directions. For the map that truly guides us is within. And it's here, it's the heart. So when I was writing, we sometimes get caught up in misdirection. It's not necessarily that that's the wrong direction. We're just interpreting it in a different way. If we're not in our hearts and we're in our logical brain all the time, we're never going to be filtering that through the technology of this emerald ray. And also, I'm being guided to say that. The emerald ray, if you think about, and I'll get to that at the end, let's think of an x-ray, right? Where you're not able to use our x-ray vision, so to speak. And I'm seeing that X or a cross, because an X marks the spot. I'm also seeing this as a cross, a solar cross. Center point, right? This is what's guiding us. The heart flame intelligence that ignites, again, it's that trifold flame, the map of our frequencies. This has to do with our brain, the heart-brain connection, our map in our brain, our map in our memories, basically mapping out what are we associating our experiences with. I've talked about this before, like pins on a map, like Google. Where have I been? Where am I going? How far away is it? It allows us to then experience it and create from a more aware, oh, that's in front of me. I can see that now. Whereas if we're caught up in it, we're going too fast, we may not see that roadblock that was pinned from our higher blueprint that we're able to see when we're connected into our heart. Fire infusion in the blood allows us clarity of purpose and direction. It lights the way, so to speak. Again, this is bliss. Lights up our blueprint of grand design. Yet it creates from a plane of non-separation. And this isn't necessarily a physical place. It's connected to source, the spirit that moves in all things. May the force be with you. As you process the information that is all around, as you seek to synthesize, I also wrote down left brain configuration. So again, getting out of the left brain, we can synthesize it through the heart. I was seeing a music synthesizer that balances and equalizes the sound of the music itself, which also equalizes the left and right hemispheres of the brain and allows us to then really hear the sound behind the sound. If any of you play music or create music, you know what I'm referring to. This synthesizes the tones and balances them out. You will hear a sound. You will hear a sound, asana, a sound, deep within that resonates. And again, let's go back to, for example, the word was one. Right? In the Bible, talking about Genesis and creation, sound. The word is a sound from one perspective. Deep within that resonates, that is deep within, that is resounding. So it's like a resounding. It's like we talk about in yoga, if you turn off all of the sounds and you just listen to what the earth sounds like, that's where Om comes from. And this is it's actually A-U-M, right? Although there is also O-M and O-H-M, and I won't go into all of that. So that is deep within, that is resounding also. It's like you're hearing it again. That is beyond the scope of this transmission. So it's beyond the scope of this transmission, this particular sharing for some, but break that down. What is a scope? We use it to see. It's a tube, right? And transmission. It's like showing us what our mission is from one perspective. For you are in a state of transformation. That's all a play on words. You are in it, right? We're in a state of transformation. Always. We're always transforming, but we're also in form. And we're always sharing and communicating information that is transmitting through our technology. So if we can do it from the heart, changes everything. And we're in that state, right? We're aware of it on an existential plane of existence when we're in a place of coherence. And I should have used that word from the beginning, but coherent state of transformation. You are moving into a new field of resonance. And I'm not going to break that down. A new vocabulary is at hand. Now this, I am going to just take a moment and break down. So, apologies, let me do pause. Okay, so I'm in vocabulary here, and I like this site, ETYMON online. So Edin online. Okay, I don't know if that's how you say it, but so when you look up vocabulary, so if I go back to what I wrote, which is a new vocabulary is at hand. And I always talk about this, but for many people, vocabulary is words, it's language, it's putting together a set of types of communication. And in this statement, it says a list of words with explanations, word, vocare, which is to name or to call. And it's talking about voice, to speak. So the reason that's important is also think about sign language. A new vocabulary is at hand. So this is a play on words as well, because we are in the process of creating this new vocabulary or rediscovering it in writing, in hand movement, in all forms of communication. Yet you are also in the space of an old soundology, right? So ology, right? So if we take a moment and break that down, oops, I meant to hit pause record. Oh, I can do it right here. Oh, that's cool. And so I felt guided to look up ology because I didn't even think about what does ology mean. And it's talking about a word form element indicating branch of knowledge, science. So it's talking about O is a stem vowel in the previous element, which I could go into so much there. So if I go back to this, you are also in the space of an old soundology. So we're in the space of an old, it's like 1 foot in the new world, 1 foot in the old world, right? We're in that process of transformation and jumping planes of existence. And if we can get into the heart, we are in that new space. But we still are existing within a 3D, 4D, and I call it 4D at this point, reality construct or crystal system, lattice work, right? And that's an old soundology. So old speech, old science, old words, and again, a branch of knowledge. So we're kind of in this old knowledge, but this can be good and this can also be limiting. So when I say old, we'll call ancient knowledge is what we're tapping into. And old to me is like, okay, it's worn out, it's old, and that's kind of what we're still playing in. An old sound that is seeking to remember itself, to get us to view it, to get us to remember it. So it's like it doesn't want to go away. It wants us to see and to hear it so that we can experience it and remember it. And this is a deeper layer that I haven't even really delved into, but I'm going to keep going. It's like when we see something and we keep looking at it over and over again, I guess I'm going into it. So when we see something and we're constantly looking at it and analyzing it, we're giving it life, we're listening to it, we're giving it energy. And so it becomes a real thing. It is a thing that we have created essentially. And we're in that process of saying, you know, thank you. It served its purpose, right? But it isn't helping us to create anymore. It's actually, I'm hearing a dying ember. What's that song? Dying Ember. Oh, I'm thinking of Willie Nelson. Of course, I think he has the bus Rambling Rose, or you guys, this is just hilarious. So I'm going to share a screen again. So it's the Dying Ember. It's the lyrics to the Willie Nelson song. Dying Ember. I'll have to look that up and share it later. But I see what my guides are trying to share. So again, it's back to the rose. Sorry, I lost this. Okay. So transformation is at hand. So soundology, to get us to remember it, for in this memory influx, okay, it's a memory that's in flux. So it's like we're not quite remembering it the way that it was. Because when we change our frequency and when we're in a state of 0 point or neutrality or coherence, and again, I'm using these words interchangeably, although I know they're all a little slightly different, but similar. What happens is we literally remember things differently. So this is a huge play on words. We remember things, you know, when you're in a better space of you know, you're going through something and you go back and you're like, oh, that wasn't so bad. That changes the relationship, our mapping system, our relationship with that memory and everything else, I've got goosebumps, associated and attached with that memory. So by us being in this emerald space and this trimergence and convergence and coherence, we literally are remapping our entire system, which we've talked about before. And what I had written was, for in this memory influx, memory in flux. So our memories are shifting, but we're also getting an influx, okay? And it's in fluctuation. It's a movement. We're allowing ourselves to be still and remember, if that makes sense. I also played here with the word meme. So if you look at the word meme and what it means, oh boy, such a nerd. I might be calling this video the nerd video. You know, what is a meme? We're associating a picture and it's basically saying this is what it is. But that's changing as well. So those trigger us to think of certain things. We can read one meme and it makes us happy or sad, and it's poignant according to what that view is expressed in that connection to a picture and a paragraph, a thought, a feeling. All of it's connected. It keeps us in a state of flux, of pull. And I also heard pull. So like, and I didn't write that down, I might add it, but I'd heard like polarization when we're not in that space. It keeps us in that state of being pulled from one end to the other, and we feel like we're being pulled in different directions. For it is always a state of fluctuation that we are in. And the way that's written, for it is always a state of mind, a state of feeling, a fluctuation that we are. We are the state. We are the energy behind the fluctuations. We are the state of being. Yet there are certain flux patterns that do not always create from a heightened state of awareness. And this is a little bit going back into the old energies. They're not in that higher plane. They're not in that higher state of awareness, yet they are still there. And I'm guided now to look up this, the word flux. All right, so I'm back at flux, and if we look at this, oh, I lost my place. I will get better at this, I promise, guys. Uncreational, okay, so it keeps us in a state of flux, of pull, which I'm gonna probably type that in. Oops. Okay. So flux is a flowing, a rolling, a bleeding. And this is a whole other flow because this has to do for me with fire in the blood. Okay. Fire, fusion, right? But so it's mapping these together. It's playing with these words. But this is talking about a sense of continuous succession of changes. So I really like that term, and I put that in there. For it is always a state of fluctuation that we are. So we are this changing constantly. Yet we are also still. We are also the still point. Those old fluctuations and sounds are from an old source, grid, pattern, artificial, or other uncreational reality. So it's almost like it's going backwards, or it's not creating anymore. So essentially it's not expanding, it's not creating anymore. So it's the opposite. I put, so to speak, no longer real, so to speak. For this reality, not wrong, it's just no longer serving our new routes, speeds, or our new creations. You are unfolding, and in doing this, you may fold the page on old concepts. You may turn the page, the planes, the rows. You may create from within you a new molecular point of view. So I could go into a lot here, but you are unfolding and doing this. You may fold the page and old concepts. You may turn the page. So when I look at this, I see the folds of a rose. I'm also seeing the folds, the gray area in the brain. And basically this comes back to what I was talking about earlier about the memories, the memories. And it changes our molecules. We create literally as a new point of view because our molecules have completely shifted. And when I look at the folds and turning the page and the page of old concepts, it's like turning the wheel. I keep seeing this reference to a Penrose triangle or strange loop. And if you look at like reality, like think of a Rubik's Cube, I'm just using this as an example. When you turn the squares on the Rubik's Cube, it lines up different colors and patterns. And that's essentially what's happening, is it like changes our dimension. It changes the shift. It changes the timelines. And this to me is seen as folds, like origami, right? It's changing the shape and it's folding in on itself, implosion. So in addition, for this reality, these options, this ability, these options are much more expansive than what you have been told, much more expansive than what you have been emboldened with. People have not felt bold enough to step into this because they are still plugging into the old system. And I was also hearing embedding. So we haven't been, it's not like we've been encouraged to do this because of the old system, because of the uncreational system. We haven't been encouraged to be bold and to be in the heart and to be more expansive, but now we are, and because we've shifted. And embedding is a completely different video. Again, I invite you to look up fractal field. One must be bold in their centeredness in order to frame out their new existence. Again, it's like building a home. The foundational structure and the frame must be built first and be centered. Centered is the center of the rose. Breathe into this new way of being. Allow yourself to find space, to sit within, the space within. Now, briefly, when I was seeing this, it's not only about us feeling within the space that's around us, it's feeling the space spread out in us, because a lot of us are really, we don't breathe. It's literally about breathing. Part of that breathing is what gets us into that space of neutrality. It's like I've done videos on this, how to get into the heart. I invite you to go back and watch that. So I have to hit pause here and get a drink of water. Excuse me. So what happens is breathe in for 5 counts, create space. Breathe out for 5 counts. The space is still there. Breathe in for 5 counts. What space am I in? Breathe out for 5 counts. I am creating space is kind of what I was seeing. And this is also, everything that's written in here is micro, cellular to macro. Space. We're talking about space-time, or the existence of space going into outer space from inner space. So, allow yourself to step out of the race that does not win, isn't about winning, recognizing when is now. So that was a whole play on words. Stepping out of the race, right? Be still and know. That does not win. It's actually W-H-E-N. So it's not when. When am I going to get there? When is this going to happen? I've got to win, right? It isn't about that. It's recognizing when is now, now, now. And then I continue to write, there is a whole inbound, a whole in one, M-bound. So M-bound had to do with embedding, but I'm going to get to that in just a moment. Like inbound, but I was guided to say the word M as in M&Ms or Marta. So a whole in one, M-bound, a whole new waves, not just one, but many, of frequency that is being offered to delight the senses, that is being offered. And I was also guided to spell it out, offered. So I'm going to come to that in just a minute. Ability, and if you look up offered, it's actually the ability of the body to store electrical charge. Did not know that until I looked that up. That was pretty cool. So M-bound, I'm going to go into the hexagon briefly. And lo and behold, I thought I wasn't even going to write it down. Yet here it is. And I'm not a mathematical person. I mean, that to me is cool looking. But it talks about here, I'm still figuring it out, but it's an intersection. M is the center of the circumscribed circle. And it says transfer the line of segment AB 4 times on the circumscribed circle and connect the center points, which I find interesting because of 4D, 4 dimension, and we're intersecting with these dimensions. And also this is the center of centripetal or centripetal force. Yet if I look here, I know something else wants to come up here. Where was that? Oh, right here. A line segment is a part of line that is bounded by two distinct endpoints and contains every point on the line between its endpoints. So I found that interesting because this is a segment. It's bounded by two distinct endpoints. Like, this is, I don't know, pretty kind of cool. We'll have to come back to that later. Delight the senses is also a play on words. It's delight. In fact, I'll have to type that in. Has to do with music. So I'm going to, so if I look at this, I have a lot of references to D, and I'm not a musician. I don't play music. I am fascinated by it. I actually have a keyboard that I'm eventually going to learn how to play. I have books that I've purchased about music and musical scales, and it's, to be honest, being that I've never trained in it, it's hard to wrap my brain around, but I feel it, right? We all feel music. And if I go into the musical note D, I know there's more depth to this, but it's talking about, it's a whole tone above C, and it's known as re, right? R-E, which to me, I could go into a whole different level here because I'm now being guided to really just take a moment here. Okay. Well, essentially it's musical note. I went back in to look, and RE has something to do with rhenium, which is an element, but I have a feeling it has to do with the re, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, to, so it's on the musical notes, and it's a higher harmonic, and it has to do with assisting the body to store electrical charge. Offered to ignite the creative spark of something more than, so it's adding, it's creating, right? And as we cast away our doubts, as we cast away that which has been, and actually I could have gone into a lot of that as well because cast has so many references in this. It's like the old cast, it's cased systems, it's a cast, like you had something broken in a cast and now it's healed. So it's like healing those old wounds of self-doubt and not unworthiness and so on and so forth. And cast away that which has been, creating clouding of judgment. And it wasn't like clouding of judging others. It was like clouding our discernment, our ability to discern and see, and essentially puffing up the feathers. So it's like once we get into this, all these waves that are coming in, also that we are sending out through this emerald ray frequency, activation, implosion, bliss, plasma charge. And if we're doubting it, it makes it, we're not there. If we're in fear, if we're in doubt, if we're in self-judgment, it's only when we let go of all of that and we just are like, nope, I don't doubt myself. This is real. This is what I'm doing. I feel good about this. That puts us back into that space that allows us to have that creative spark of something more. And it gets rid of this whole fluffing up the feathers, so to speak. Although that can also be a play on words. So those that were, puffed up are no longer, we're going to see through that. Go back within and harmonize, for you are a walking harmony. Again, reference to music, vibration, sound, light, symphony, vibration. Be the gems. I'm going to go back into the meaning of the word gem. The seeds sprout, the buds, right? A precious stone. Be the gems. See through the layers, express from the heart. Consistency in tones of inner collaboration, inner adoration. So loving our inner child, collaborate with ourselves. Oftentimes we are in that space of worrying about everybody else, and we forget to ask ourselves, what do we need in this moment, right? Let's work together, literally. Me, myself, and I, my higher self. Inner self-love of life, of this journey as it unfolds. Again, that reference to unfolding, flowering, the rose. And you will see as more and more meets the eye. So this, again, reference to the gem, the eye, okay? the reference to more and more meets the eye. So we'll see more. Like if we get into this space, a lot of people is like seeing is believing. Well, believing is seeing. So if we get rid of the self-doubt, we're going to see it more. It's going to show up for us. Okay. And it's not just from these two eyes, it's through our intuition and the truth, the all-seeing eye, right? In the coming months, in the coming tides, for all is now. So it's like things are changing, things are coming up, it's happening. And so it is. So I also went through and shared, and I put this on my blog. I talked a little bit about all of this. And so I think we kind of covered it all. I wanted to go a little deeper into we're going to go on to Fared. I guess I didn't pull that one up yet because I was having this reference to infrared. Here's the element that came up with RE. I don't know, that might just be a synchronistic thing. I look down here and I see it's D block, which is interesting. It says the periodic table is it's a 6. It's a period 6, which of course is synchronistic to me. So as within, so without. So as we're doing this, so is the earth. New elements are going to be coming up. We're going to see new elements. And it's interesting because it says there's a low availability of it, but we'll see what's going on with that. A block is a set of elements used. Okay, that doesn't matter. But D block, maybe we'll play with that at a different time. So I want to go into, I'm going to pause this. I just want to end on this note on Fared. It's talking about F, and it's basically saying it's the ability of the body to store an electrical charge. It has to do with Faraday. So I've written a lot about this in my previous writings, and I didn't realize that that's what it's about, but I write about that all the time. And if you look at capacitance, which is coming up, it's unit of electrical, if I'm even saying that right, capacitance. Ratio of change in electric charge of a system in the corresponding change in its electric potential. And it essentially has to do with electromagnetism. So if I go back and I look at this, I mean, this is just physics. It's essentially, we are walking musical, harmonic, chemistry, technology, and the more we can get into that heart-centered awareness, and this is science. So many of us hear the words that are coming through and we feel it in our body because it's literally resonating in a certain tone and frequency that's reminding us, oh, I can feel this way. Oh, this reminds me of expansion, right? So I found this fun. Thank you for nerding out with me. And I hope you found it interesting and perhaps I'm going to go back and do this on quite a few of my videos. Not all of them are this in-depth, but much of what I've written, this is what it is. And so thank you so much for tuning in and just having fun with me. And I invite you to go back and watch that video if you want to. I'll put the link on this video. In love and light, have fun creating neutrality, bliss, breathe, get connected with the earth, do things that you love, be around people that bring you joy, stop watching stuff that is the old tone and the old energy so that we can create in this new reality, so we can jump planes. And that's what we're doing. So in love and light, namaste.